August of right now. Wilder, Fury 2, here we go.
Okay, we'll start with this per tweet from Michael Benson. Billy Joe Saunders has declared that he's going to retire from boxing. Unless a Chris Eubank Jr. rematch can be agreed, the only fight I'd come back for is that fight. If the money is what I wanted. If not, I wouldn't bother.
How much money does he want?
£5 million, which, you apply the conversion rate, translates into $6.9 million.
What's that up front?
Off a loss with no world title. Billy Joe Saunders' last fight, he was accused by a lot of people of checking out, quitting. And, we didn't react to the news here on the channel that he split from Mark Tibbs, that Mark Tibbs wasn't going to be training him anymore. In hindsight, it all paints a certain picture, doesn't it? Essentially, what Billy Joe Saunders is saying is he's prepared to walk away from the sport of boxing unless the people over there at Sky Sports pay through the nose for a rematch.
No, he might not be in a position to make demands.
But he's still making them, and he's making them because he's prepared to walk away from the sport. We talked about this here on the channel before the Canelo Alvarez fight, that if Canelo Alvarez beats this guy, what's left for Billy? You think he's going to go up there and swap punches with those light heavyweights? You think he's going to do that?
For less money than he made fighting Canelo.
Or what, you think he's going to continue to subject himself to the torture of having to make super middleweight or potentially middleweight for a Chris Eubank Jr. fight? You think he's going to keep doing that after he scores his highest price, his biggest payday? I don't think so.
It's not that there aren't fights still out there for Billy.
There are. And it's not that Billy isn't a good boxer. He actually is. He's a very skilled, crafty southpaw. His bread and butter has never been physicality. He's always been a finesse fighter at 160 pounds and 168 pounds. And his talent, if he had the drive, could see him doing decent at least at 175 pounds. I mean, we see Callum Smith is set to make his light heavyweight debut up there. I still think Smith versus Saunders is an interesting fight amongst other interesting fights that are still out there for Billy, if Billy still had the drive. But he doesn't.
He's got a ticker problem.
It's not that he can't, it's that he doesn't want to. I don't know what's going to happen here. I don't know if this Chris Eubank Jr. rematch is going to happen or if it's not going to happen. I just know that Billy Joe Saunders is making things difficult, and that accents his frame of mind, his school of thought. There's nothing in boxing for him anymore as far as he's concerned, and at this point, he's not fighting for legacy. He is just a pugilist, just a prize fighter. No more, no less, and he just fought for the biggest prize of his career, so what else is left to do? He's been a world champion in 2 divisions. To him,
He only ever lost to Canelo.
Canelo is the consensus #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the sport right now. That being said, losing to Canelo, there's no shame in that. Billy Joe Saunders can retire knowing that he was the first guy to beat Chris Eubank Jr. It's not Billy that needs the rematch, at least not in Billy's mind, and if Chris Eubank Jr. really wants a rematch, he's got to make it worth his while.
Billy's been a world champion in 2 weight classes.
Chris Eubank Jr. has yet to be a world champion in 1. A full-fledged world champion. Billy's got wins over big names like Andy Lee, David Lemieux. He's actually shared the ring with a Canelo Alvarez. To Billy, there's nothing in it for him. So if you want his time, you're going to have to pay for it. And you might have to pay through the nose, but that's how he feels. I can't tell you with any certainty that this fight will or won't happen. I mean, maybe Billy will change his mind and rack up one last payday before he sails off into the sunset. I wouldn't rule that out. I just know that it's not actually Billy that needs the rematch. And we're going to find out what this fight really is worth to Sky, because they're the ones that are going to have to pay for it. In other news, per tweet from Dan Raphael via multiple sources, Jim Lampley has opted out of calling Saturday night's Holyfield versus Belfort Triller pay-per-view #boxing. And even though I didn't see this coming, didn't give it much of a thought, it comes as no surprise. One as distinguished as a Jim Lampley being a part of that decorum.
I think he would have seemed out of place there.
That news broke that Jim Lampley climbed into bed with Triller. I thought to myself, they make for very strange bedfellows, Jim Lampley, Ryan Kavanaugh, and the people over there at Triller. Because the people over there at Triller, and their irreverent, brash, strange brand of boxing, combat sports, I should say, as a good number of fighters on this card aren't even boxers. They're mixed martial artists.
Jim's too good for that place, man.
Jim Lampley is a fixture, a giant in the world of boxing. He's royalty, is what he is. And he don't need to be rubbing elbows with the filth!
I don't know what the issue was.
I don't know if Jim opted out because of some discrepancy with money, or maybe he opted out because he doesn't want to be a part of this event. He doesn't want to be a part of this show that features a some odd 58-year-old going on 59, Evander Holyfield, versus some MMA guy.
I don't think Jim needs the money.
No, I don't think Jim is strapped for cash or hard up for work. I'm just speculating. I'm just guessing like you guys are. And if I had to guess, part of me feels like Jim Lampley didn't want to be a part of what Triller is and what they're trying to do and what boxing has become in the United States. Because this ain't boxing at its best.
The Florida Commission actually gave Evander Holyfield a license.
That news is not without its criticism. We've seen the footage of Evander hitting the mitts, hitting those pads, and while he's kept himself up very well over the years, a man his age, given his condition and just how he looks, his speed, his reflexes, his timing, what's left of it, this is not someone you'd actually want to see get into a fist fight, let alone a boxing match.
God forbid something happens to him.
Not saying it will or won't, but if it did, well, that would reflect quite poorly on the sport, and the repercussions of it would reverberate through it for years to come.
There were health and safety concerns here.
The sport's dangerous enough as it is for peak athletes performing at the height of their abilities and their physical prowess. Evander Holyfield's best days are clearly behind him. The man is 58 years old, and the people over there at Triller are so determined to try and turn over a profit, leave a footprint in the sport, that they've got a 58-year-old man boxing some MMA guy 15 years his junior. I mean, what kind of freak show is this?
I don't know, maybe Jim Lampley didn't want to be a part of that.
Didn't want to be a party to it and encourage more of these kinds of cards. I don't know how long Triller's stay in the world of combat sports is going to be, but if all they can offer up are old men,
retirees,
and novelty fights, no, I don't imagine that Triller is going to be around for very long. At least not in the sport of boxing, but we'll see.
Jim won't be calling the fight.
So Ryan Kavanaugh and the people over there at Triller have enlisted the aid of 50 Cent. If you don't want to listen to Donald Trump call Holyfield versus Belfort, you have another option. Because we've learned 50 Cent is calling the fight on Triller's main broadcast, and I don't know if that appeals to you guys out there.
Donald or 50 calling the fight doesn't make me reach for my wallet.
Triller seems determined to drive up subscriptions by enlisting the aid of very popular pop culture icons, Donald Trump and 50 Cent among them. And it all just reads as desperate, like some kind of haphazard casserole of familiar faces.
None of it makes the card appealing to me.
But guys like me in my age group aren't the target demographic for Triller. You can see they're attempting to appeal to the teen and tween crowd.
Guys that make TikTok videos.
Or guys that watch them. It's for this reason that Triller's carbon footprint, as it were, in the world of combat sports, boxing,
It's more of a novelty act than anything else.
I don't think any true blue boxing fans take Triller's endeavor into the world of boxing seriously. Not yet. And what passes for a card on their platform.
I don't know who it appeals to, but it doesn't appeal to me.
Another news, former IBF junior welterweight champion Sergey Lipinets tweeted, going back down to 140, took my shot at the best at 147 pounds, Jaron Ennis, was first to fall, but not the last. Sorry to say, but they ain't fighting that kid anytime soon. And I have to agree, both fronts. I never felt Sergey Lipinets was cut out to campaign as a welterweight. He actually is on the smaller end of the spectrum. His body of work at junior welterweight wasn't all that robust, so why should he campaign at 147 pounds? And, he found out very quickly that he doesn't belong up there.
So he says he's going back down to 140.
To likely pick up what could soon become a vacant title at 140 pounds in the near future, though not the immediate future. The reigning undisputed champion at 140 pounds still is Josh Taylor. He is set to defend the undisputed crown before this year is out against his mandatory challenger, Jack Catterall, and perhaps at some point thereafter, all those alphabet titles will become vacant.
Maybe.
Sergey,
Trying to position himself to pick one up.
maybe if he sticks around down there long enough, gets himself a world title, he can have himself a little fight with Gervonta Davis, who was in action at that same weight very recently against the very unheralded Mario Barrios. The PBC, as it were, is moving their chess pieces on the board. When it comes to Sergey Lipinets' assessment of Jaron Boots Ennis' situation, he's quite right. Jaron, on the face of it, would seem to be in the right place to land himself some welterweight fights with some of the more notoriable fighters at that weight, and yet that's not what we're seeing, that's not what we're hearing. I mean, by all rights, he should be fighting the Danny Garcias and Keith Thurmans of the world. He just faced a former champion from 140 pounds. He should be facing a former champion now at 147 pounds. But Keith Thurman still sits inactive without a fight date. Danny Garcia is seeking refuge up there at 154 pounds. No idea who he thinks he can beat up there.
But that is where he's supposed to be going.
The old proverb, too many chiefs and not enough Indians, almost immediately comes to mind when I think about this welterweight landscape, this welterweight situation. All of these guys think they're stars. No one wants to assume the role of the proverbial gatekeeper, the kind of guy that a Jaron Boots Ennis has to beat in order to prove himself, because Sergey Lipinets, decent scout that he might have been, he didn't really represent the best and brightest fighters in the welterweight division.
Sean Porter's all tied up with Terrence Crawford.
Just don't know who it is that Jaron is going to be fighting. One fight that makes sense to me from where I'm sitting is a fight between Jaron and Josecito Lopez, but for Josecito, who has breathed second life into his career, a guy like Jaron Boots Ennis, that's a high-risk, low-reward fight.
Looking at it, I don't know what's going to happen there.
Finally, per tweet from IFL TV, I will flatten you twice. Tyson Fury warns Anthony Joshua, promises to knock out Dillian Veit, Deontay Wilder, slams Eddie Hearn, and talks David Haye return.
Is this the other arm of promotion?
It's the main arm of promotion, if you ask me. Most of Tyson Fury's comments, the ones that are getting attention, they're not even about Deontay Wilder. As strange as that might sound, Deontay is but an afterthought.
Comes Fury with this same old shtick.
Really is just predictable at this point. Tyson Fury's niche, his gimmick. It's such a watch by this guy. He says, I've got a more dangerous man in Deontay Wilder than Anthony Joshua will ever know how to be. Joshua 10 times would never be as dangerous as Deontay. I've got a much more dangerous fight.
This used to be a pretty decent marketing angle.
It used to be more effective. Before Deontay Wilder was throttled in front of the eyes of the boxing community at large, on his home turf, no less, before he made all those excuses, before he became the very strange guy that he is today, before he admitted that Anthony Joshua offered him more money to fight with him that was on the table for him to fight Tyson Fury, but Deontay Wilder.
He admitted that himself.
Those are his words, not mine or yours. And in plain English, Deontay Wilder let the world know that Anthony Joshua offered him more money to fight than was on the table for him to fight Tyson Fury again. And it was Wilder that chose to fight Tyson Fury again. You can't berate him. You can't belittle him.
You can't sell this dream that he's scared of you two guys.
Because Wilder already admitted what he admitted, and we know that before that arbitrator ruled,
he was supposed to be fighting you.
And that's the cover story, isn't it? That's why you had to walk away, because the arbitrator ruled in Wilder's favor. Belittling and berating Anthony Joshua as a fighter, as a man, it doesn't work anymore, because Wilder admitted what he admitted, and we know that it's not Anthony Joshua's fault that the Fury fight didn't happen. The arbitrator messed all of that up.
He's about to fight Usyk.
Former undisputed cruiserweight champion, now heavyweight hopeful, in a fight that is a lot more interesting, has a lot more buzz around it than the third installment of Wilder versus Fury 3, the guy that Tyson Fury so conveniently blew off because he said nobody's interested. And he's a foreigner. Well, so was Tom Schwartz, so was Otto Wallin, so was Sefer Seferi and Francesco Pianetta, but you fought them.
Talk about your piss-poor excuses.
Excuses and comments that really haven't aged well since here in 2021, the premier fight this year involves that
foreigner that doesn't speak good English.
the guy you claim nobody's interested in seeing. His fight with Anthony Joshua is getting a much warmer reception than your three-peat with Deontay Wilder.
Oh, well, that's karma for you.
Tyson Fury claims he's got a much more dangerous fight on his hands. A much more dangerous fight in Deontay Wilder for the third time.
Again.
Than facing Anthony Joshua once. And it's just funny how all of this happens, how both of these guys always seem to find a way out of an Anthony Joshua fight.
And then try to blame him for it.
The truth is, people are waking up. The truth is, people are sick and tired of Tyson Fury's same old spiel, and they want something new. They want what they haven't seen already, and you're not giving it to them with this rubber match, this three-peat, this trilogy.
The jig is up.
You want people to believe that Deontay Wilder is a more dangerous opponent for you than Anthony Joshua, so why haven't you fought him yet? I mean, you had a choice. You always did. You had a choice who you wanted to target after your big comeback, and even after you made it. When you fought Wilder the first time and you jumped into bed with Top Rank, thereby delaying the rematch, you had a choice then, too.
You want to tell us that he's more dangerous?
Deontay Wilder, while he twerks at barbecues, pouts at press conferences, has been making excuses for well over 12 months. I think it's somewhere 16, 17 months now. 17 months worth of excuses.
It's a tough sell.
And perhaps it didn't always used to be. But here today in 2021, that's what it is. It's a tough sell, and you know what it looks like? It looks like little more than another arm of promotion you're using, and we all recognize it. Name drop Anthony Joshua, Eddie Hearn, and Matchroom whilst you're about to fight someone else. The same guy you've been all wrapped up with for the last, I don't know, 2 years?
People are sick of it.
You claim that you're this fighting man, this warrior, this Spartan, whereas Anthony Joshua, he's a business guy, but you're doing TV spots. You're the one selling books. You're a walking, talking contradiction. Even if you are one of the best boxers in the world, that doesn't change.
That doesn't entitle you to go back on your word as much as you do.
You're full of shit, and people are finally starting to come around. People are finally starting to see it. See through Tyson Fury 2.0, Tyson Fury reinvented for an American audience. You want to say that Anthony Joshua's media trained, but you're the one.
You're the one that had to apologize for all those inflammatory and bigoted comments.
You didn't stand by your word, and you didn't stand on your square.
You had to clean up your act.
You had to fly across the Atlantic Ocean and reinvent yourself.
Because the Brits already knew what you were all about.
A good portion of them. I'm not trying to convince you that Tyson Fury isn't a good boxer. He's a very good boxer, one of the very best boxers in the world. He is. But what he also is a walking, talking contradiction. The guy's full of shit.
And he needs new material.